Now, BC Tech, in partnership with the City of Surrey, City of Richmond, and Township of Langley, are proud to be working together towards a new economic narrative for BC by advancing the capabilities of our manufacturing sector. As Surrey, Richmond, and Langley represent more than 70% of all manufacturing activity in BC, our advanced manufacturing project has the opportunity to impact thousands of manufacturers and the future of BC's economy. Over the course of our project, we've identified existing industrial capabilities that could be retooled to support future production needs and help companies diversify their businesses by focusing on emerging opportunities in new sectors. And we're very grateful to have the province of British Columbia's support for this project. Joining us to help open today's session, it's my immense pleasure to introduce Richard Sawchuk, Director of Industry Initiatives for the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. Welcome, Richard.
It's a real pleasure to participate in this morning's session on a new economic narrative advancing BC's manufacturing sector. I want to acknowledge, first of all, the leadership of BC Tech and its partners, Surrey, Richmond, and Langley, on the development of the De-Risking Emerging Market Opportunities Toolkit and digital resources, which is designed to help manufacturers assess market opportunities, adopt tech solutions, build resilience, and accelerate growth. And I also understand the toolkit will highlight made in BC tech solutions to help manufacturers, including many of you, facilitate future business growth. The Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation shares these objectives, and it's why we developed economic recovery programs such as the Supply Chain Resiliency Grant Program, which supports projects such as the one we're participating in today. I understand from America there are businesses participating today from various sectors, including food processing, fabrication, mining, logistics, and transportation, as well as many local tech solution providers. While diverse in sector focus, which is a real strength of our province, the commonality is certainly the need to enhance productivity and competitiveness. And with technology rapidly changing, manufacturers must future-proof their Industry 4.0 transformation plans or risk falling behind their competitors. So thank you again to BC Tech, the participating municipalities, our panel of tech leaders, and to each of you for taking time to participate in today's session. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and I know that my colleagues at the ministry look forward to working with you in the future to help achieve your business objectives, both here in BC and in our strategic international markets. Thanks very much.
To tell us a little bit more about the work we've been doing, I'm really pleased to introduce our next presenters. They're going to be talking to us about the Advanced Manufacturing De-Risking Toolkit and the digital resources that we've launched today. Those resources are going to help manufacturers assess market opportunities, adopt technology solutions, build resilience, and accelerate their growth.
In terms of market sizing, there's a couple of different ways to address market sizing. There's a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. Bottom-up approach is really effective for businesses that have been in a similar or adjacent market for a long time. And a top-down approach is really something that businesses use that are entering either a completely new sector or developing a new product that the world hasn't seen yet. And so before I kind of jump into some examples as to how to consider market size, I want to call on Jude from J&L to just talk a little bit about how they evaluate or estimate how much they're going to be able to sell when they're entering a new product market.
I'm Jude Neal, CEO of J&L Canada. We're manufacturers of innovative textile performance textile products. And we branched out last year, actually in 2020, into PPE when the city of Surrey called on us to retool our production facility. Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster as far as PPE is concerned. Some of the points you highlighted were at the time we didn't sort of have an evaluative system to figure out what the long-term sustainability of those products were. But now, 2 years down, we seem to have understood it pretty good. We've changed a bit from where we started, and right now we seem to have found ground, some kind of stability in the industry, not particularly with PPE, but an offshoot from PPE. So yeah, I think a number of your points, the steps you highlighted are critical when assessing a business product. Other than that, I mean, I could say, I mean, if there is scope for growth, one has to be really cautious about looking at long-term sustainability of a product. I mean, specifically going back to PPE, the competition has gotten really crazy, with PPE being one of the only products that had some demand when everything came to a standstill. So we've diversified since then into wearable technology with textiles. I mean, our forte was manufacturing garments, and we've sort of put some performance finishes on our products now, sort of kind of carving a niche out for ourselves, which I think is key when going forward with any kind of product, is to carve a niche out and understanding what that demand is. We're still figuring things out. It's not like we know everything, but you know, it's all about feeling the ground around us and taking those steps appropriately. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jude. So Jude, when we spoke earlier this year, what was really interesting to us was you kind of took both of these market sizing approaches, a bottom-up approach for markets that you're already really close to. So when entering a new t-shirt market, high performance t-shirts, going out directly to the retailers that you work with. I think you had mentioned Mark's Work Warehouse as being one of them, and you know, getting some of those kind of guaranteed buyers to commit up front, even if it's just a handshake deal or a verbal conversation, to how many of a product they would buy before you start to invest in the R&D to develop that product. And then for a completely new market to you, PPE, that was one where you had a lot less information, and so a top-down approach made sense. You know, looking at the total size of the market, who are the competitors that can already serve that market, and then what is the kind of unmet demand there that may be able to be served by yourselves and other new entrants.
Yeah, they're two different routes. The one with the business that we were in, or we are in, those are kind of long-term connections that we had developed. They were existing clients that knew our capabilities over the past 20 years. So breaking ground with such kind of clients, I wouldn't say is something that one could do very easily without having sort of developed them from a long-term point of view. New, and that newness kind of threw us off track, because a lot of the requests were like, okay, they want PPE right now, and that drew us into developing products, but then very few people, if any, were willing to commit. So it was like, you know, it's like the chicken or the egg. Do we have the product first,
Totally,
and then look for demand? You know, that's where we were at.
We're gonna cut you off there, Jude, because we need to move on to the next segment. We've got limited time this week, but thank you.
Sure.
So the next thing, this is highly related. The other kind of big piece of the market access or the market risk is market access. So it's one thing if, you know, there's a huge market there, an available market, but are you the right people to be able to get into it? And how easy is the pathway into that market? Are some big kind of questions that we see businesses grappling with. And there's a number of kind of dimensions on which you want to look at market access. So first of all, do we already know these customer segments? Do we have existing customer relationships in this space? Do we have existing sales channels we can capitalize, or key partners that we can capitalize on in terms of distribution and supply chain partners? And then you also want to look at the competitive landscape. Do we already have a value proposition in this space that's quite compelling, or that transfers to this new market area? Do we already know who the competitors are? Are they people that we're familiar with and that we're already competing against? And the idea here is really that it's a lot easier to make one-step moves than it is two-step moves. So if you were to take any of these dimensions, say customers, and put them on a vertical axis of, we've got existing on the bottom and new on the top. And if you were to take your sales and distribution and put them on that horizontal axis of, existing sales channels versus new sales channels, it's much easier to move into a new sales channel where you have existing customer relationships, or to move into a new distribution, or to move into a new customer segment where you have existing kind of distribution partners, for instance, than it is to try and make both of those moves at once. And so this is really about trying to select new markets that are closest to where you are right now, recognizing that that's a surefire way to kind of reduce the risk of entering a new market. The second piece of the toolkit is really all about transition risks. So transition risks are really all about knowing what's coming before it happens. So being able to identify what are the changes that are going to happen to our business, how big are they, and do we have the resources to navigate them? And these changes happen across several kind of functions in the business. There's the core functions, your supply chain, processing, distribution, marketing, and sales. But there's also changes to support functions that are often kind of behind the scenes, or that you don't think about before entering a new product market. So how are our administrative processes going to need to change, or our procurement processes? How are people going to feel about this? So in the toolkit, there's kind of a canvas in there that we call the transition impact canvas, which is all about identifying, what changes are we going to need to make across all of these dimensions of our business? Who's going to be responsible for making those changes? How long is it going to take to make this change? And how much is it going to cost? And the big idea there being, before you go into taking on all of these changes, you really want to make sure you're able to find the right partners. You're able to make sure that you have the financial resources to sink into those changes, that your people are ready for them, that they have the capacity and bandwidth to take them on, and that you've got enough time to transition as well, that you can transition quickly enough to meet those market needs. So Isaac with Scene Ideas went through a big transition again at the start of the pandemic, from making custom environments for events to prefab plexiglass barriers and other products that were kind of pandemic specific. And Isaac, I wanted to get you to share with us, if you wouldn't mind, some of the changes that you made in your business, some of the things that maybe surprised you and or that you didn't expect, and how you address those.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me today. It's interesting just listening to you speak and looking through the toolkit, which I was sent a copy a couple days ago. And I really do wish that I had this 2 years ago. And for us, it really was 2 years ago when our industry started getting impacted by by the pandemic. It was early January, and things just kept falling until March, when it was pretty much closed down, and remained closed until just a couple days, or just a couple weeks ago, when it was opened up again. So we had to change. Pardon me. We didn't have to change, but to keep the company we had to change because clearly there was no industry left for us to operate in. So we did a number of things. And again, it would have been really great to have a toolkit like this and or some time to make a plan and to really think it out. And as I've talked to Liam about, it was more done out of tenacity and the determination to keep the company and a little bit out of panic. But some things that we did, we were primarily before really a business to business model of company. We didn't do much in terms of advertising or marketing. We were built on reputation and our sort of like our great product that we offered. And we had been in business for, probably about 16, 18 years in our current form. And then this happened. So that model clearly didn't work anymore. So some changes we implemented, God, I'll have to look back on it now, but we went to, from a business to business to a retail model, like quite honestly, almost overnight, which was probably the biggest change for us. Obviously, we had to kick up a lot more on the marketing side of things and get our name out there with the new products that we had to offer, which were a PPE sort of variant. We didn't go in clothing, but more into signs and rigid barriers and things like that. And so aside from going into the retail market, we had to revamp our entire systems in our shop. We had to move our rental inventory out because it was essentially just in the way, and we had to change our warehouse into a retail distribution warehouse. We went online. We've always had a website, but we went to online retail and kicked that off. We were able to procure some funding that assisted in that eventually, but we had already started that much earlier on. So that was a big change for us, that e-commerce model. What else did we do? I mean, I guess the biggest thing is that switch to retail and everything that comes to it. But aside from that, in sort of our version 2.0 of how we reinvented ourselves, we started looking inward more at our manufacturing skills. And we really thought about how we used to do things in terms of manufacturing and how we would have to do it in the future, and sort of not in a more of a mass production way, because we still don't really produce one thing enough. We do custom work and a lot of it, but we looked at investing in technology. So we heavily invested in that in terms of manufacturing, a lot of computer operated, generated machinery. Kind of, we kept some of the old sort of fabrication technology, but we brought in a lot of new stuff. Our thinking there was an anticipation of the labor shortages that we're currently in, and moving and transitioning to a model where we had sort of less but more highly skilled staff working on more precise machinery for manufacturing. So that was a real key for us and how we operate now, and how we're still kind of retooling our company. In that, we also started a new company, which again, operating in the live event industry, as I call it. It kind of falls under tourism and hospitality, but it's really a live event industry. We had to kind of think of ways that we could push out of that and essentially become more pandemic proof, as I call it. And that was going into the large format print and custom signage. It paired really well with our custom fabrication, say around building a trade show booth. We would always have to have one in the same. And in that area, especially, it's a very fast-paced in terms of technology sector. So we jumped into that stream, and we really did go all in terms of the latest technology that we could get our hands on and invest in. Again, with the same kind of forward thinking of less labor, more highly skilled operators producing higher end products all around. So it's, yeah. What did Liam say? Or sorry, not Liam. What did the fellow say before? It's a bit of a roller coaster. That's an understatement.
Yeah. I think one of the things we found really interesting about your story too is just the notion that moving from a highly customized product to one where you're now doing mass manufacturing. Yep. Big change for your staff. big change for your people and something that you weren't necessarily expecting at the outset, and that kind of quickly surfaced after the transition. So
yeah,
kind of one of those things to watch for.
Yeah, that was a big HR hurdle in just trying to convince everyone to get on board the new sort of model that we were adopting.
Wonderful.
One of many.
Thanks, Isaac.
Thank you.
So I want to move on to the kind of third and final section of the toolkit, which is all about operational risks. And these are really the showstoppers. So there's two kind of categories of operational risks here outlined. One is compliance risks. So in some sectors, there's a lot of regulations and a lot of certifications that you need to get to be able to produce products. And so, you know, whether those are coming from the provincial or municipal or federal government, or even industry associations and certification boards, professional designations or facility certifications. And so being able to identify these again up front and identify the timelines to get permits, to get certifications is really critical to being able to understand when you can actually start selling products and when you can start making money. It's not just transitioning your own business, but it's making sure that you're able to jump through the necessary hoops and clear those government hurdles along the way. And then the other big one is investment risk, obviously. Is it going to be profitable? Is it going to, is moving into this new product market going to net enough of a profit that it's worth the investment at the end of the day? And critical here is really knowing what's the opportunity cost. If we invest here, what are we giving up investing in other channels? And so as part of the toolkit, we've put together a kind of interactive online tool that allows you to do some really, really quick and easy profitability calculations based on cash flow projections. And so Liam's just going to walk you through really basically what's in there. And we're going to, you know, the link is in the toolkit, and it'll be sent around to everyone that's here today as well. So you can play around with that tool to quickly identify and calculate the various ways of looking at profitability of a new investment.
Thanks, Petra. I don't want to hold up the show here, so I won't do a full walkthrough. The online tool for profitability is at the end of the toolkit. I know we're all interested in profitability. The reason it's at the end is because a lot of the inputs you're going to need are things we've prompted you to think about earlier in the toolkit. So market size, price, any transition costs on, say, new capital, equipment, et cetera, are things you're going to need to produce good cash flow metrics. And so if we flip over to the next slide, we've got a page for you to put in some of your operational assumptions, like I just laid out: transition costs, units sold, et cetera, price, cost of goods sold, which produce cash flow projections. On the next page, we ask you to input some of your financing assumptions. You know, where are you getting your capital from? Is it debt? Is it equity? What are the interest rates or expected returns on those sources of financing? And then from those inputs, we calculate for you a couple of profitability metrics. So return on investment, we're all familiar with. It's the total return of the product over its lifetime. Payback period tells us how long it's actually going to take us to recoup our initial investment. We want that to be as short as possible. NPV, the net present value, tells us how much the project is worth today. That's a bit of a more technical finance metric, but one you may put some weight on. And then the last one's internal rate of return, which is, again, a more technical finance one, but it has a really simple interpretation, which is that if you're looking for projects with an internal rate of return, that 12%, that's greater than your hurdle rate or your discount rate that you associate with the project. So the great thing I think about this tool is because it's online and interactive, it gives you a chance to tweak your assumptions and see whether the profit of the project is really susceptible to the assumptions you're making on price. If we reduce our price by 50 cents and all of a sudden we're deep in the red, you know, that might be a red flag for you in entering this market. So we hope you use it. I think it gives you a chance to play with some assumptions here and do some informal sensitivity analysis. I'll kick it back to you, Petra.
Great. Thanks. I think we can wrap up there. Just kind of a final note, identifying and evaluating risks affiliated with entering a new product market doesn't mean you can't move forward. It just means you need to be careful. And there's a lot of ways to de-risk entering new product markets. You can avoid certain risks altogether. And those are the kind of showstoppers, the go, no-go decisions. But there's a lot of risks that you can mitigate or transfer. You can, for instance, transfer the risk of investing in equipment by leasing it or by taking out insurance on that equipment, that sort of thing. So yeah, we'll leave it there. And I hope that you're able to utilize the toolkit, and thanks to the 3 municipalities and BC Tech for supporting its development.
Awesome. So we'll start with a round of introductions. I'd ask each of you just to share with us a bit about what your company does and a bit about your professional background. And maybe Ashton, good to see you. Maybe we'll start with you first.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. I'm the CEO of a robotics company called Advanced Intelligent Systems, and you can see my background, AIS is what we call it. Advanced Intelligent Systems is a robotics company that has created a modular approach to robotics. We have a library of modules, both software and hardware, and we can use these modules to reduce the time and the cost of creating new robots significantly. We have protected this library by filing patents and having trade secrets in place. And the first market that we have looked at is the horticulture market and the fruit and vegetable greenhouses. And we've so far created 5 automation products and a series of software products based on the modularity for this market. A little bit about my own background. I have always been a serial entrepreneur since I was a little kid, and then I migrated a little bit more towards academics. My background is in microbiology, a little bit of law and MBA, and then my PhD, which I'm working on right now on entrepreneurship and innovation. But I've always been in business. I became the CEO of Advanced Intelligent Systems in 2017, and I've been at it since then. Previously, I was in banking, I was in lending, I was in business consulting and various other things.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us.
Sure.
Rob, maybe I'll pass it over to you. Tell us a bit about the work you do at Phobia.
Sure. Phobia AI is a Vancouver-based tech company, and thanks for having me today. And pleasure to speak with the panel and everyone watching here on Zoom. We provide real-time market data intelligence, leveraging our core proprietary platform and best-of-breed partners. We focus greatly on the new digital transformation of integrating wallet technologies, providing real-time interoperability. A lot of what I've heard today, of course, from price analysis and supply chain and inventory management and forecasting. These are all the tools that we provide through a real-time interoperable solution today. We do, of course, from us is a lot of customization. I'm very familiar with Andrew's company and CGI, and others is our current CTO, spent a great deal of time there. So for us, yeah, my background has always been entrepreneur as well as Ashwin. I was very deeply embedded into product manufacturing in China and supply chain inventory. So for me, I was always looking at solving problems, of course, as we see the world evolve. And as we've seen through pandemic here, we've seen 20 years of digital transformation over the last 2. So by providing operators that typically work in traditional legacy systems to now, of course, moving towards edge cloud and transformation from a data process and application standpoint, integrating all of these solutions, making sense of them, helping them leverage and action to monetize their data across all of their channels is really key. As Richard said in the beginning, providing transformative solutions and future-proof, more importantly, as we see with a lot of small business, unfortunately, due to budgets and size and teams, is very reactive as in regards to proactive solutions and future-proof evolution. And that's what we provide today at Phobia AI.
Thank you. Maybe I'll pass it over to you, Eric. Tell us a little about this fish.
Great. Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, so we're a software and AI company based here in Vancouver, and as the name of the company suggests, we're in the seafood industry. So we've developed some software and AI to help seafood processors basically digitize all their production, quality control, and traceability data in real time using tablet computers and IoT devices. So, we're really focused on the seafood manufacturing space. We're pretty global. We have a core team here in Vancouver and Canada, but also some employees in Southeast Asia and Latin America, which are also large seafood producing regions. We do have some, and over the years, I've worked with a lot of seafood manufacturers in Richmond and in Surrey. Lower Mainland does have a lot of seafood manufacturing. I myself, in terms of my own background, I was born in Tofino and raised in New Cluelid in a commercial fishing family. So I've got kind of generations of expertise in the seafood industry. About 95% of our company is engineers, and I'm actually one of the only non-engineers. So I come to the business with a lot of expertise in the seafood industry.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And Andrew, I know you've had quite a fascinating career. I'd love to hear a bit more about you and what you're doing today.
Yeah, so hi everyone, Andrew Donaher. I'm actually here mostly to listen to the panel. There's just some great companies doing some great things. I'm with a company called CGI, for those of you that don't know. CGI was founded in 1976, actually another Canadian story, in Quebec City. First customer was Rio Tinto. And now we're a global consulting firm that specializes in providing IT and consulting services. So we have 80,000 people worldwide in 40 countries, publicly traded at 12.5 billion and based in Montreal, Canada. So very excited about that, proud Canadian company. And as far as myself, I started out in the realm of data science and AI before we called it that, as a data scientist, doing data management and advanced analytics and churn modeling and supply chain modeling and demand planning, all that through my career, advancing through the ranks of that, if you will, and then decided to become to move over to the consulting side to help. And I work with organizations locally and globally in the physical product world. So retail organizations, grocery organizations, apparel, as well as in the forestry and energy sector on supply chain and predictive asset maintenance and those types of things. So wherever there's AI or demand management in the physical product world, you'll probably find me. So,
Awesome.
And there's a lot of things happening right now in BC that we're very, very, very proud of, and very interested to learn more from this panel today as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, yeah, let's dive right into it. So maybe the first question I'll pose is from each of your individual perspectives, what are some of the key benefits that technology innovation can have in sectors like manufacturing and others? And maybe, Eric, I'll come to you first to talk a bit about the work you do and some of those key benefits.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I kind of bucket the benefits into three cost categories, and one is around labor costs. It's that digital technologies automate a lot of processes, especially in the food industry. There's a lot of compliance reporting, a lot of auditing. So once you have all your data digitally, you can automate a lot of reporting. So there's cost savings there, definitely for labor. That's less important in Southeast Asia and Latin America, where labor is a lot cheaper. But the one area where I think that there is real value, and that's really around process control and having tighter process control over your supply chain or over your manufacturing. Believe it or not, a lot of companies manage all their data on paper, then it goes to Excel, and they get multiple Excel sheets and put them together in a report. And it can take a day or two for companies to get manufacturing reports. And you can't fix a problem on Wednesday when it happened on Monday. And companies, even larger companies in the seafood industry, it's not very digital, still manage their inventory on Microsoft Excel. So then somebody realizes that some product has been sitting in the cold storage for over 2 years, and now under food safety rules, you have to throw away hundreds of thousands of dollars in raw material. So the stronger process control is really key, and it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. And that's because seafood is a global commodity with global pricing. So, and it often makes up 75% of your cost of goods sold is the raw material. Seafood, as we know from going to the grocery store, is pretty expensive. So improving the process control is definitely one of the key benefits. And then the final one is around compliance. And there's growing calls by governments, consumers, retailers for improved traceability through the supply chain. Unfortunately, seafood is probably one of the most notorious supply chains for being opaque, with a lot of illegal fish, fraudulent seafood, and seafood from supply chains with human slavery getting onto our dinner plate. And so there's been a huge movement by a lot of human rights and environmental groups and governments to tighten up rules around the supply chain and making it more difficult to import into the US and EU without proper supply chain data. So that has put more onus and more costs onto businesses. And if you can digitize all that and run it more efficiently and have better real-time data, you can have better compliance reporting, which I put into an opportunity cost. And that is, if you don't have strong traceability, the Europeans are not going to want to buy your product. I mean, you might be able to get it into certain markets like China, but the higher end markets want more data from the supply chain. And so there's an opportunity cost there of not having a good reputation and strong traceability.
Well, that's fascinating. Afshin, I might have you weigh in, and you might have some comments around labor as well, I'm guessing, based on the work you do.
Of course, with us, labor is huge because we are catering to farmers who grow vegetables and fruits and horticulture people, and they have always been in a huge labor crunch to the point that they have a special immigration programs to bring labor from abroad, primarily seasonal. And one of the farmers was telling us, it is not the labor cost itself, it's the fact that we have to find them, bring them, house them, insure them, and then pay them. And what happens if somebody's here and can't really work because they're sick? We will spend all that money and we're not getting anything out of it. So labor is definitely one of the biggest issues. And then with the products that we've created, we're treating plants touchless in order to control fungi. And so that has huge implications on less use of fungicides, so less chemical going into our food, and also controlling these plants in a way that they won't be losing crops because of infections that widespread and just wipe out the entire crops once in a while. And of course, creating more efficiency, having an eye on the field where the robots can actually report back on whatever the farmer wants to know, whether it is the humidity, temperature, or the foliage on the plant, the health of the plant, or whatever else they would need to know, where basic labor wouldn't have the ability to actually watch out for those things and to report it properly. So yes, definitely clarity, transparency, efficiency, and the less dependency on foreign labor.
Thank you. Andrew, what are your thoughts? So the question was around some of the key benefits that technology innovation can have in other sectors.
Well, I'm in agreement with the two previous presenters. We're all technology companies now. There really isn't one. Whether your primary product that you sell is apparel, or if it's a perishable product like fish in the grocery industry, the technology innovations are required for, in the supply chain world, flexibility and visibility. Those are the two primary things that I'm working with clients around the world on right now, including clients in BC. And the ability to manage and accelerate the use of data like never before is critical to all industries. Whether it's being able to make adjustments in the demand shaping and the demand sensing for your retail organization, or for an energy organization or a forestry organization with the supply chain issues that they're incurring. And the changes in technology even in the last 3, 4, 5 years to support that, with some of the things that both Eric and Ashutosh have already mentioned, is absolutely critical. We're all we're all technology companies to some level. It's just a matter of how well you do it versus others.
Absolutely. We do like to say that every company is a tech company.
Thought you went like
Rob, from your perspective, what are some of those key benefits?
I think it's evolution, quite honestly. I think, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations are stuck in their traditional legacy, antiquated business practices. They get caught, of course, without embracing technology and exploring, analyzing new innovation, adopting these practices. As we see here, businesses become irrelevant very, very quickly. The challenges of which the pandemic has brought on and the shift towards digital and mobile, and a big focus of ours, of course, is transformation from a digital wallet perspective with credentials for access and entry and whatnot. But a lot of our focus is providing the interoperability for retailers, example of online, in-store, and mobile commerce now. So eliminating silos, providing the real-time access and actioning of the data. Most organizations don't need more data. They need to understand how to leverage, to monetize that data to make faster, smarter decisions, as the other panelists have said here today. And it's truly, to me, about providing transformative solutions.
Oh, thank you. Now, I know the kind of topic today is around supply chain, and certainly we've all felt the impacts of disruptions and continue to feel the impacts of disruptions. Do any of you on the panel have examples that you could share of how technology solutions have or could be used to solve some of those critical issues, and maybe case studies or examples that you could share with us? And Andrew, maybe I'll start with you. And I know there's a lot of amazing tech companies here on the panel and in BC abroad solving big problems. What's been on your radar in terms of the supply chain space?
There's been a couple of things in terms of the supply chain space. I was reading a book over the break, AI Superpower Wars, and in it they talked about how we used to be in the age of the expert, even just 5-10 years ago, but now we're in the age of data. And so what we're seeing a lot of is organizations that are taking advantage of obviously large cloud-based operational systems, but then plugging in advanced algorithms into those systems to have more flexibility to take advantage of the issues with demand shaping and demand planning in the last 24 months. Custom out-of-the-box algorithms just aren't getting it done anymore. You need to be able to take vast amounts of data from various sources and be able to manage that data to make those improvements. That's the biggest, those that are winning right now are the ones that are able to manipulate and manage their data at scale and pace. Then the other things that I've seen, local company, for example, D-Wave, and some of the things they've been doing in quantum computing with network traffic and management, and with being able to enable consumers to use quantum to solve problems that we couldn't previously solve. So those are some of the things that, when you start to look at the complexity and scale and the externalities involved in predicting and shaping demand now, and being able to have the visibility and the capability to adjust your supply chain. You look at some of the things that, former CTO at Canfor, David Trent's now doing with CN Rail in terms of visibility in the supply chain across their rail system. It's the ability to manage and deliver that data at scale, and not just from a platform perspective, but from a skills perspective and a capability perspective. That's really changing the game. That's what we're seeing globally, and some of the great examples that you guys talked about locally as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good segue. Eric, maybe I'll come to you next. I'm curious about kind of the last 24 months and ongoing, but maybe you have some examples you could share.
Yeah, I think that, I think one of the challenges in food processing, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, is just keeping the doors open. I mean, our largest customer is a tuna cannery in Ecuador. So Ecuador is the second largest canned tuna producer in the world. There are 2,000 employees, and it's obviously challenging during a pandemic to keep the doors open and keep everybody safe. and healthy. And I think that one of the advantages around the digital technologies is just the remote oversight that managers and supervisors can have. You don't need to go down to the factory floor all the time. You can sit in your office and basically, watch the factory, socially distancing and seeing exactly what's happening. One of the examples that I have, it was pre-pandemic, but it's gives an example of the remote oversight. And we had an Alaskan customer that was on a remote island. So we set up our software on premise, but their headquarters was actually here in Vancouver, and they would remote in through satellite internet into the factory to review the workers stuffing their shipping containers or filling their shipping containers. And what they discovered is that they were overstuffing them by about 10%, and they were losing about $500,000 a year. When they brought in our technology, they were able to basically review every shipping container prior to it being sent out. And in one case, a 20-ton container of cod roe was being shipped to Korea. And what they found is somebody accidentally stuck in a cod fillet into the shipping container. And they said that if that would have went to Korean customs, it could have been turned around, sent back to Homer, Alaska, and cost the company like $30,000. So being able to have that kind of remote oversight, and we have a number of customers now who have remote facilities. We're just onboarding with the largest lobster exporter in New Zealand. They have 9 remote facilities throughout the country, all feeding in live lobsters to 2 export facilities. And now out of their headquarters, they can basically operationally see in real time what's happening everywhere. So I think just, the psychological safety as a supervisor or manager, being able to see and know what's going on in real time, I think is one of the big values, and especially during COVID where you can't travel. New Zealand's gone through a lot of lockdowns. So you can't travel and go out and see the facilities physically, but you can digitally now. So
excellent. Thank you, Eric. Rob, I'll come to you next. And so the question was examples of technology solutions that have or could be used to solve some of the critical supply chain issues we've been seeing.
Yeah, we've been entrenched in this throughout COVID here. But my past background of inventory fulfillment optimization is really the key. Once again, it's all about, as Andrew said, connectivity of interoperability for data sets, and understanding that from, one of the examples, which was a huge challenge for, small and medium business as well as enterprise, was the new buy online, pick up in store. This was an absolute disaster when it first came out. Transitioning this now through interoperability of data sets provides a means to positive user experience. That in the beginning, numerous times you go order something to find out, no, actually wasn't available, or you drive to pick it up and you find out the bad news then. So access to information is always key as the world moves forward through forecasting and price analysis, fulfillment, automation, and whatnot. These are kind of the real world things that we've been solving throughout COVID, and understanding users at a segmentation level, of course, of interest. Seafood, not just how many did you sell, but why did it sell, who did it sell to? All of these kind of moving parts is where we're headed and on the forefront.
Excellent, thank you. And Afshin, I might pose a slightly different question to you, but
Sure.
we're thinking about new technology solutions. How important are those first few customers? Because I know that you've gone through this process yourself. And what are there any benefits that they receive as being part of that initial development?
Of course. So I want to tell you a little story before I answer your question. We had an ad that we saw in the paper for a customer looking for labor. And we look at it and we say, hey, our robot can do that job. So let's play a game. Let's apply to the job and let's send the robot's resume rather than a real person's. So we did that. Next thing we had was the person calling us saying, hey, is this real? Do you actually have a robot? How many can I hire? And we weren't going to sell them. We we're going to lend it to them, just like, same thing. They pay $20 an hour and the robot would do the job for them. So then conversation led to a place where they said, how can you bring in your robots and customize it to fit our work process? And so when you look at the early adapters of technology, I think they're the ones who can actually dictate how we would customize that technology to the best use of their environment. And sometimes these kind of solutions can be so valuable that others will be willing to change the way they do business in order to implement the technology that's available. And we've seen that happen all over the place. When you look at Amazon and their warehouse, they actually bought a robotics company and they started building warehouses around the functionality of that robot. Shopify did the same thing. All the manufacturing plants are doing the same thing. So that first adapter that steps in and says, yes, I'm willing to put in the time and make sure I help you and advocate for you until you develop a proper solution, will pretty much dictate how the work is going to be done in their vertical going forward for anybody who wants to adapt that automation or that technology.
That's excellent. Thank you. So when we're thinking about the future, maybe you guys can shed some light on where you see some of the biggest opportunities for technology to make an impact on the competitiveness of BC companies. Are there trends that you're seeing? And Eric, I've got a feeling you're like kind of on the bleeding edge, so I'm going to come to you first and maybe hear about what's happening in the world of traceability and tracking.
Yeah, so I mean, just in general, I mean, there's been an explosion of technologies in the seafood industry over the last 5 years. So we've surveyed about almost 80 companies in the wild capture fisheries that are developed or providing software, another 80 companies in the aquaculture sector, and about 50 companies involved in kind of supply chain and traceability. And like the majority of them have actually been, over 50% of them have been set up in the last 5 years. So there's been a huge explosion in technologies. In terms of some of the trends, in aquaculture, what we've seen is that about 70% of the companies in aquaculture now have some sort of AI, largely computer vision, but also machine learning algorithms, and pulling large volumes of sensor data to better manage farms in the ocean, you can imagine. On the supply chain side, no surprise, we've seen an explosion of blockchain companies over the last 5 years. I think we'll continue to see the adoption of blockchain technologies and AI, in the seafood sector. Interestingly, on the wild capture fishery side, it's the more traditional side of the industry, right? I mean, humans have been out fishing for tens or hundreds of thousands of years. I like to say it's kind of like one of the last vestiges of our hunter-gatherer society is our wild capture fishery. I mean, we don't go out hunting for food anymore, but except in the commercial fishing industry. And there it's been a bit more traditional, and it's a lot more focused on surveillance of fishing at sea. And a lot of it has to do with video surveillance and using computer vision to automatically classify surveillance so that you can see whether a fishing vessel is accidentally caught a mammal or caught a bird or caught some bycatch that they shouldn't be catching. So I think over the next 5 years, what you're going to see is a lot of computer vision technology in the wild capture fishery, and you're going to see an explosion of vessel monitoring. So more cameras at sea and a lot more data. And with all of that data, that's where the AI comes in. And a lot of that data hopefully will get connected and drawn through the supply chain. So when you're eating at home, you might even be able to see a video of the fish that was caught on your plate. I mean, that's taking it to a bit of an extreme, but in 5 years, we might be there.
That's amazing. As long as you don't name it, I think we'll be okay. Yes. Good. Afshin, I'll come to you next. And are robots the future? But more broadly, talk to us about some of the trends and opportunities you see.
Yeah, I think with our approach to robotics, what we hope to do, especially in the ecosystem in British Columbia, is to help others not to reinvent the wheel. We have 1,048 claims to invention, and we have 85 patents we've filed, and we have a series of software and hardware modules. And we're willing to share that with the community. You know, if somebody's on a development path, rather than try to write their own localization system or navigation, they can come to us, we can collaborate with them, we can share our modules with them, and we can speed up their development time and reduce their development costs quite significantly. And I think just like everybody's trying to automate as much as they can for more efficiency, more accuracy, less mistakes, I think that trend will continue, and it will definitely continue faster in the future as we get more mature as an industry to automate. At the beginning, we had the 6-axis robots, and everybody adapted those. And right now, we're in the autonomous robots and robots that can actually interact with their environment. And I think once that technology matures, it will become a norm in our lives.
Thanks, Afshin. Andrew, I'd like to get the big picture view from you, and feel free to share with us your thoughts on the future, where the biggest opportunities are, and what are the trends you're seeing.
There's a few trends I'm seeing, and I agree with what both gentlemen said. So there's an article a few weeks ago in the Financial Post about job openings in BC over the next decade. There's going to be over 1 million jobs open in BC over the next decade, with I think it was close to 600,000 people retiring. So that skills gap that's looming is going to present a real requirement for technology to support. So whether that's, physical robots in warehouses helping to move goods, you look at, yes, what Amazon's done. You look at some of the stuff that Alibaba's done or Tesco's done in the UK with robots in warehouses. You look at RPA, so to support data management and data movement, where the quote unquote perfect API for data set interoperability doesn't exist. You look at what we're doing in the environmental sector with some of the things that with deep learning on satellite imagery to support reforestation, or to support keeping the railways supported, or seagrass growth, and be able to monitor that. So those things about making sure the supply chains are capable, but also the environmental and supporting society's growth and society's shift over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Those are the ways that technology can help to support that. And, being able to adjust your supply chain using quantum computing because of the visibility issues, or, your inefficiencies and because of the demand changes, is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical, both from a sustainability perspective and from a profitability perspective.